She turned psychology into eventology. It's Event About It with Dr. Kristin Malek. Hey everybody, welcome to Event About It. I'm your host, Megan Martin, and our guest this week is best known for mixing neuroscience with name tags and creating experiences that don't just make you network, they make you change. She's the architect of curiosity herself. Welcome to the studio, Dr. K. So glad to
Hey.
have you here.
Yes. Oh my gosh. This is going to be the most upbeat, hyped up podcast that you've done. I've drank coffee and watch out world.
I love it so much. Well, a couple things for our listeners is one, we have nerded out about neuroscience and all the things. And one of the things I learned about you when I was reading your new book, which we're going to get into, is we have a mutual love of restoring historic homes. I had no, like, we have never talked about it. In all the years we've known each other, we've never talked about that before, which I think is fun. Like, how did you get into that? What do you love about it?
Yeah, actually, it's not even mentioned in the book. And I don't even know that you know, unless you were super stalking my LinkedIn. But my bachelor's degree is actually in interior design. And so I started in like the design world and I just fell in love with the woodwork and the historic homes and kind of fixing them up so that way they'd be a great place to live and not these dilapidated places anymore. So, yeah, I love restoring historic homes.
Do you think that your background and education in interior design translate in any way to like the neuroscience and the event design world that you find yourself in now?
I think it's kind of like when you think strategy, you can apply strategy to everything. When you're thinking design and design thinking and design principles, you can kind of design it in different fields. So even though I wouldn't necessarily say, okay, this wood tone goes with this wood tone, but maybe, right? The design principles, you definitely have helped me over the years. Absolutely.
Oh, good to know. I might have to look into that. Okay, so before we jump into all the brilliance that is you, I want to know at what point did you realize in your event design career that neuroscience and event design actually kind of belonged in the same room and there was a lot of overlap between the two areas?
I have listened to all your podcasts and I have been like preparing for the last week with like all my super amazing one-liners and my alliteration and all of these crazy things. I'm like ready for whatever you throw at me in this game. I'm so excited. But first, I am going to start with like the origin story of how did I end up doing this? And if you have read the book or you've heard me speak or keynote before, you've heard this story, but it's so important. I was an executive director of events in Las Vegas. I was doing association meetings, medical meetings. I was doing these major, like multi-thousand, over $1 million, events on the strip in Paris, in Caesars. And I so distinctly remember, I tell the story, it was like the changing point in my life where I was in a debrief after an event. It was a psychopharmacology event, right? So I'm in this debrief after this event, and all of the board was like, this was incredible. This was amazing. We brought 1,700 like psychiatrists and doctors all together. And it ended up winning like a bunch of awards. And we had stellar attendance and stellar sponsorship and all the things. And I just like had this like life crushing aha moment, right? Where I said, did any of these doctors actually like learn anything, right? Like did this event actually matter? Did it have an impact? And I realized we weren't even measuring that, right? We had the 1 to 5 satisfaction scale. We had, did you like the speaker? The things that we all had.
Would you come again? Would you tell a friend about all the NPS stuff that we do? Yeah.
All of those things. And so I just remember sitting there like, we just spent over $1 million on this event. And all these doctors came from around the country for their CMEs, right? And did they actually learn anything? Are they going to take this back into their practice? Were lives changed? And I realized that we weren't measuring that. And I couldn't answer that question. And in order to answer that, right, did we change mindset? Did we change behavior? Did we have transformation or an impact? I had to kind of figure out how the mind and body worked. And again, my bachelor's degree is in interior design. I avoided like all of those hard sciences. And I realized I really had to go into it, like psychology and neuroscience and biology and behavioral science. And I just like started nerding out in all these different industries to figure out like how could we design experiences that we could say with absolute fact an ROI of transformation, right? Like how could we design an event or an experience and like prove, I hate prove, right? I'm air quoting for those on audio. How could we tangibly show quantitatively, qualitatively that it changed mindset and behavior? And that started this crazy journey, this crazy journey, right?
I mean, so it sounds like there was this pivotal moment where you're like, there has
Mhm.
to be more, and we
Mhm.
owe it to the organization and the budget to do more and not just say, like, we won the awards and the event was so pretty. Like, there has to be something. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, and just to like sum that up, because I'm practicing my alliteration, right? I'm so pumped for this because we're on the same page. But I just realized, and so many I feel of your listeners and you will agree with this, right? Like I realized that people were designing events for logistics instead of get it, their limbic systems, right? So my brain was basically like looking at all these agendas and they were RSVPing no, right? My brain was RSVPing no to half these agendas that I saw. And I was like, I would never want to design something I wouldn't actually attend. So how can I change that? You know?
Well, that's a perfect segue into our first game that we're going to play called Science or Schedule. This is the game where your brain wants to balance, but your boss wants big ideas. Because in the real world of events, it doesn't matter what the brain wants if the schedule says otherwise. So I'm going to throw out some classic conference conundrums, and you tell us which side wins, the science or the schedule, and maybe give us a little nugget of how we might design for both. Okay?
Okay.
All right. First one. So attention spans in our brains typically need a break after 20 minutes. It needs a refresh, a different change of scenery, something like that, right? Science tells us 20 minutes, we need to change something. But the schedule and your boss says 90-minute keynotes with no breaks.
The brain definitely checks out. And with the TikTok and how our brains are processing information so quickly now, it's actually the brain checks out pretty much around like 10 to 12 minutes now. But definitely checks out that 10 to 20 minutes unless something changes. 90-minute keynotes are so like our parents' lifetime, right? That's not engagement, that's cognitive cardio. You got that? I'm like I should say for everyone that's listening that doesn't know me, I have multiple years in like improv and stand-up comedy and cuz I was like I'm going to be the best keynote I could ever be. So just buckle in cuz we're along for the ride. It's going to be great.
I love it so much. It's so great. So how would we go to our bosses and say the 90-minute keynote doesn't work?
Yeah, it definitely depends on your boss, right? And designing what that conversation or what that looks like. Because some leaders now are all about that authentic leadership and emotional and human centered design. That's going to be a different approach for that boss than if your boss is still very much like, I want ROI, I want dollar, I want metrics, I want this. It's the same outcome, but it's just a different approach that has to be designed specific to your target market.
All right, next one. Brains and science say people remember how you make them feel. The schedule says make sure the hashtag trends.
Oh my gosh, I love that hashtag. Feelings drive memory. Yes, absolutely. Feelings do drive memory, not the marketing metrics. And I have like my MBA focused on marketing, right? But feelings drive memory, not marketing metrics. You cannot hashtag oxytocin, but you can design for it.
All right, next one. Science says emotions drive memory. The schedule says just email the PowerPoint afterwards.
Oh my goodness. Emailing the PowerPoint, that's like sending them a grocery list and calling it dinner. You know, you can't just give people information. You gave them information, not an experience. Without emotion, there's going to be no retention. You have to give them that experience.
That's why storytelling is so important and context matters. Next one.
Mm-hmm.
Science says, this one speaks to me so much deep in my soul. Science says people need rest. Schedule says let's do sunrise yoga and midnight karaoke.
I am not the person, Megan, to speak on sleep. I will tell you that up front. But when you're talking about sunrise yoga and midnight karaoke, that is not wellness. That is sleep deprivation with sponsors and branding. You cannot design transformation if everyone's running on cortisol. Recovery is where that brain actually integrates the change. So it's so, so important.
It is. So on that same lines of wellness, science says reflection solidifies learning. So rest, turning it from short-term to long-term memory.
Mm-hmm.
But our schedule says we'll just end with a DJ.
And with a DJ, Megan, what kind of what kind of conferences are you going to? Ending with a DJ would be fun, but let's be real. You, me, and all your listeners know we know events, and we know that most likely that event is going to end in a box lunch. Come on, a DJ. But seriously, to answer your question, a dance floor is not a debrief, though I do respect your attempt here in your question at kinesthetic learning. But reflection is really where that insight becomes integration. So that reflection is super, super important.
It is. All right, last couple. Science says build community through storytelling, that emotion that we've talked about. But the schedule says skip intros, we're behind, get to the point.
Perfect. Let's emotionally connect later, maybe by email, because nothing says belonging like a post-event survey.
I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. All right, science says fewer choices equal better focus. The schedule says 17 breakout sessions all at once.
Oh my gosh, 17 breakout sessions. That is not personalization. That is paralysis. I mean, you can just thinking about 17 breakout sessions, that's decision fatigue setting in before anyone even learns a thing. You want to design for focus and not FOMO, which is what those 17 breakout sessions are trying to achieve.
Yeah, and on personalization, one thing I'm seeing shift in the industry that I'm really excited about is moving away from like general personas to behavior personas. So not just topic based, breakout sessions. Like if you're trying to solve this, you should go to these sessions. And maybe it's across 6 different topics. So I'm seeing that shift in the industry right now, and I'm very excited for it. All right, last one. Science says design for emotion, schedule says design for budget.
Okay, one of my favorite terms to talk to people about right now is you cannot spreadsheet serotonin. Budgets do not remember your event, but your brains do. And you cannot spreadsheet serotonin. I mean, it's alliteration without trying at that point because I say it all the time.
I completely agree. So as we're rounding out science or schedule, what's something planners can keep in mind as they're designing their events that also balances the neuroscience need, like our innate nature of brain science and what we need as humans when they're looking at their schedules?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to go into a whole discussion I could go on a soapbox for. So I don't know if we want to do it during the game, but when I'm helping design events, conferences, experiences, it's really about the flow. So you could completely detail all of the competencies that people know, that people need to get to their goal, but the flow is so, so important. And what you're seeing is these boards and the planners, they're scheduling these sessions based on speaker availability and not flow. And it's disrupting that flow. And it's causing a lot of like cognitive overwhelm and exhaustion. And so, yes, I would say a look at the flow. And I'm sure we'll dig more into that later for
Oh,
sure.
yeah, we're definitely getting into that in the after show on
Yeah.
how to design for flow. All right, well, that was a super fun game of science or schedule, but now it's time for my favorite part of the episode, the vent of the week. Because sometimes the only thing tighter than a load-in schedule is our patience. It's your safe space to let it out, all the pet peeves, planning pains, and things that make us irk in the industry. So tell us what bugs you about events.
My biggest pet peeve, oh my goodness, is when people think that engagement means like activities or more noise. Like engagement is more tech or more panels or more worksheets or more post-it notes, right? It's more everything. And honestly, right, you think, about Netflix and chill, that's not worksheets. And people are totally engaged and totally focused. And you don't need any of that stuff. The brain actually doesn't want more, it wants meaning. And so, what's killing me right now, my biggest pet peeve, you can tell I'm like all fired up, right? Every year, I'm working with someone, an organization, an association, as a third party planner, as a strategist. And every year, someone tells me, they're like, we're so excited. We've packed the agenda to maximize value. Air quotes for those listening on the audio, to maximize value. And to me, that just means we've removed like all of the oxygen. Anytime that someone says to me, we've maximized value, I just like picture the human nervous system like screaming, because you cannot maximize and humanize at the same time. Like if no one has time to think, if no one has time to reflect or to breathe, it's not an experience. It's a hostage situation with name badges, right? So you talked about name badges, right? If your audience is not leaving thinking or acting differently, this wasn't engagement. It was entertainment. And that's totally fine. There's a place for entertainment, but please do not call it transformation, right? Because it's not. Okay, end soapbox there.
I could not agree more. I absolutely love it. All right, and last up, it's time to event about it. The part of the show where you get to spill the tea on a memorable event moment, whether it was a huge success or total disaster or simply pure chaos. We want to hear it. So give us a funny story. You ran events for a long time, some huge, very important events too. So I'm sure you have a good story for us.
Okay, so I really thought about this because I know it's something you do in every episode. I've listened to all your episodes and I was like, what can I add that's different than maybe what some of your other speakers have said? Because we all have these hilarious plan B moments, right? We have these moments of total chaos or the naivety in the beginning. And yes, I have so many of those stories, but I wanted to share something that I think people would never think of as a memorable moment in events. It was really one that when I reflect back on like, when did I see the change in the attendees in like a really weird way? It was here. So as a preface to this, clients come to me when they need to change mindset and behavior. And the outputs of that can vary greatly depending on change desired in target market. So this can look like your typical events. It could look like board meetings or community activations, but it can also look like trainings, courses, keynotes, books, right? So it's important to differentiate that. But for this situation, we are going to talk about board meetings. And for board meetings, it's most often the president or CEO that will reach out to me because either their board of directors or their executive leadership team are not on the same page, and they need to be on the same page. And oftentimes the president or CEO wants them to be on the same page in like a particular direction. So for
every board ever.
I know, right? Every board ever.
There's always underlying objectives.
I know. And depending when this releases, like maybe our government too, right? Like we're all on this page. We need to all get together, right?
Yeah.
And so for this event that was the most memorable, I actually had a community leader hire me to get the county board in agreement on how to allocate taxpayer dollars. They were not in agreement. They could not figure it out. They were at a standstill. So I designed this event, this change as like a team building session, more air quotes, right? We oftentimes call things team building sessions, right? But it was for this 8-person committee. They were all men. 2/3 were right leaning, 1/3 left leaning. 6 were like above the age of 55. 2 of them were younger in their late 30s, early 40s. And they were like at an impasse. So anyways, I'm talking really fast. I know I don't want to take up a lot of time with this, but the end design involved 3 rooms and they had to move between the rooms. So the first was a customized escape room. The second was just a room with a hollow square setup. And the third room was a single round with a custom designed board game that they collaboratively played. But the memorable moment happened in that second room with the hollow square. So what happened in there, right? One of the questions that people love to ask me on podcasts all the time is what's the most random certification that I have? Because I have like over 30 in 8 different industries. And I always answer with this one because people love it so much for some reason. But I am a Lego serious play facilitator. So I don't even know if you knew that, Megan, but
I don't think I knew that.
I am certified to facilitate people playing with Legos. It's like totally a thing, right? And
I
it's
didn't know it was a thing, but now I'm going to be Googling that
yes,
later.
yes. And so for this group, it was like truly perfect because the Legos in this format, you can help it can really help like certain target markets talk about emotions or fears or like those soft kind of woo-woo feelings, right? That's why I mentioned like who the market was. And so you're projecting those onto these Lego bills. And in this second room, I promise I'm almost done. This memorable moment was in that second room. They had won the escape room working together and they like popped the trunk of the car. And in the trunk of the car were all these Lego boxes. And they had to like pick up their Lego box to take it in the second room. And for an hour, I facilitated these 8 grown men playing with Legos. Right? And by the end of that session, their eyes, like you could just see it in the moment, in the reflection of that, where they realized like what their holdup was and where everybody was coming from, because we were talking about what safety and security mean for you. And they had these like brilliant aha moments, right? And then they took those moments into the third room and they played that game, which was like blending Monopoly with life. And they walked out with a 3-year strategic plan by quarter, which is kind of cool, right? And you know what? That was 6 years ago, and it was a 3-year strategic plan. And when I followed up with them, outside of 2 quarters that were impacted by the pandemic, they stuck with all of them. They agreed and they stuck with it, and they worked together so beautifully for the rest of their term. I think there were 5-year terms, and that is always a memorable moment. Is these like 8 older men playing with Legos, having like these woo-woo realizations, emotional, soft realizations that like changed their lives through
Well, and the
Legos,
lives of their
right?
constituents too.
Yeah.
Like if they're allocating the dollars in
Hmm.
good ways, it didn't just change the lives of the 8 of them in that room,
Hmm.
that trickled down to
Yeah.
their whole community.
Hmm. Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. And so I wanted to bring that one up in particular. I know it's a little different than the things you've had before, but because I think if you're focusing on the change desired, that outcome of what that looks like or that design of that experience, it can be so different. Right? It doesn't have to be the traditional path we're thinking of. That was a meeting. That was a designed event, right? It had the
yeah.
boardroom aspect. It had all those pieces, and it was super important and it changed the lives of many, right?
Yeah, I think
Mhm.
that just goes back to the thing we harp on this
Mhm.
podcast all the time is understanding the why you're doing the meeting, the board meeting, the
Mhm.
conference. If we
Yeah.
really understand what the outcome is, then we can design for that. Well, that kind of goes into your new book, Path to Designing Behavior
Look
Change.
at all these
Clearly,
post-it notes,
I've taken
Megan.
like the sustainability police are going to come for me for all this paper I've put
I
in your
should.
book.
I'll pull out my copy in case you're referencing quotes.
I'm not going to reference quotes, but just like clearly I loved it. Look at all these notes. Tell us a little bit about the book and where people can get it and where can they engage with you.
It's called The Path to Designing Behavior Change. And honestly, if you had told me like 15 years ago I'd write a book about mindset and behavior change, I would have laughed like so loudly. I came from logistics. That was like not my thing. Like science, what? But I will tell you, after that aha moment I had in that debrief, one of the hardest, like truly at the hardest, career shattering, perspective shifting realizations in my life, talk about early midlife crisis, right? Um, was realizing that yes, event design matters, but event design alone is not the change. The design sets the stage, but the real transformation happens in the program, right? That good design can create the conditions where change is possible, like safety and belonging and curiosity, but it doesn't actually create the actual change. The real catalyst lives inside the structure, language, and sequence of the experience. And so that's the work of behavior change design. And so that's what this book is about. This book is about studying that space between what people say they want, what they actually do. It has the framework. PATH is an acronym, right? And so PATH's an acronym to the 4-step model. And it's the model that I've been using for like over a decade now to just help design that transformation, whether it is individually or in an event, like a live event or an online course or a book, or how we can actually design for transformation. So I would just say, like, who's it for, right? If you have ever walked out of a meeting, a workshop, or a conversation wondering, did that actually matter? Then this book is for you. And to answer your question, Megan, on where to get it, I think the easiest place right now is on Amazon.
We'll be sure to include the link in
Yeah.
the show notes so you guys can link right over. And then where can people engage with you? Where can we find you?
Yeah, I am very active on LinkedIn. I post a lot of content. So I welcome all of you to please connect with me. Don't just follow. So a lot of people will click the follow. So click the three dots and click connect because I want to see your content, right? We all rise together. So definitely connect with me. More formally, you can connect via my website. It's designingbehaviorchange.com. I do have, I run like quarterly workshops. So I do have like a 6-week workshop that's launching in January on how to design behavior change, which is great. And I cap it at 10, always at 10. And I think I have like 3 spots left. I don't know if there will be spots left when this opens or like when this podcast goes live or when you're listening to it, but I do offer it every quarter. So after the holidays, that'll be the first thing that I do.
Amazing. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining another episode of Event About It, where we turn event mishaps into marketing gold. If you enjoyed the chaos, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who needs a good laugh or is ready to make some behavior change. And don't forget to head over to eventaboutitpodcast.com, send us your events and stories to be featured on a future episode. And while you're there, you'll be able to catch the Event About It after show for the dynamic dialogue with Kristin, where we talk about event design that actually moves the needle and why staying curious can help all of us. And until next time, keep growing, keep laughing, and definitely keep eventing about it.